Got it. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:03. I'm in chambers with CAO DeJohn, CFO Rook, Councillors Cunliffe and Councillor Abbott, and Councillor Bain is virtual. We have quorum. Councillor Barmeyer is absent this evening. We have two on the gallery, which we'll say hello to, but ask that you be aware you're going to be asked to leave in a few minutes when we go into in camera. I'll call the meeting to order and we were going to close council meeting, and the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public will be awards, enforcement matters, contractual matters, and land matters. And the meeting will be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the community charter. And where required, the council does consider that the matters could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. I won't read in totality the sections other than to say which ones they are. It is section 91, subsection B, E, F, G, I, J, and N, and section 92. B, subsection B, CAO, anything else?
Yeah, 91A as well.
91A, and could you refresh us on that one?
So that is personal information about identifiable individual who holds or is being considered as a position for an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality.
Thank you very much. Council anticipates reconvening the open meeting to discuss the balance of the agenda, and that will be at 7 o'clock. Councillors, could you please confirm the reasons for closing the meeting and that you were in agreement with them?
So I had two things for closed that I wanted to add to the agenda.
Reasons for close? The agenda hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, just in terms of the reasons. Do we need anything else? Let me just quickly consider that. Councillor Abbott.
One of them is you're correct, one was personnel, so that's okay.
Well, I think we're covered under the reasons for closing, and in terms of that's covered for topic, and we could add a topic called personnel if you like.
Okay.
Do so. Item E, personnel. Councillor Abbott, was there another reason that you can be general about?
My question on bylaw enforcement.
It's on there.
It's on there?
Enforcement matters.
Okay. And then I had, just one question. I don't see anything here to do with land. Is that still in there from a carryover?
Land matters.
Land matters is D.
Look at the agenda. Which item number is land matter?
Well, it can be kind of considered under both the enforcement and land matters, I suppose. So there might be some overlap and some remainder from previous, but I'd rather leave it and make sure that we're covered on that.
Okay.
Councillor Abbott, can you put forward the motion to close?
I'll put forward the motion to close the meeting.
Councillor Cunliffe.
Second.
Councillor Bain, concur?
Concur.
Done, closed. Thank you very much to the gallery. We'll see you just before 7. I see you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is the public session of the regular council meeting for the Village of Lions Bay. Time is 7 o'clock. I am here in chambers along with councillors Cunliffe and Abbott. Councillor Bain is virtual. Councillor Barmeyer is unfortunately not with us tonight. Also in attendance with us today, representing staff are CAO DeJohn, CFO Rook, and Public Works Manager Jaffer, and Carol is our secretary this evening. Call the meeting to order. Did that earlier before we went in chambers. Council has just come from in camera and we're back to the live portion. I'll put forward a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Abbott, would you second?
Second.
Thank you. Any changes, additions, deletions? CAO, I think we're good.
Yeah, there's just some additional materials that will be referenced at the items 9A4, which is the CEO verbal report, read Bear Smart enforcement matters. So there's some additional materials from Councillor Abbott and Bear Smart folks have provided some information, as well as Public Works Manager Jaffer has some email correspondence with the waste provider, collection provider.
Thank you very much. Councillors, anything else to add? No deletions, none?
That was mine.
Call a motion. All those in favor of the agenda as amended, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Thank you very much. And we are on to the public participation, which is item number 5. And there's a preamble before we begin. CAO to join.
Well, I just wanted to mention, as was discussed, that in terms of public participation in council meetings, the intention and the best practice is to receive the questions and comments and to respond in due course, either via the councillor who's responsible for correspondence for that term, or via staff if it's information that's been requested. Alternatively, the public is reminded that if there's specific information they would like a written response to, they also have the option of sending correspondence for the agenda, which can be addressed in that manner as well. So.
Thank you very much, CEO DeJohn. So with that all said, we welcome the gallery. And if you've got a question, I think Mr. Mayor Burr, you're unmuted. And if you've got the floor, if you'd like, sir.
Thanks for having me, and good evening, Council. So you've seen the questions that I raised in my correspondence that's in tonight's agenda, so I won't go through those. I hope that some of you may have already seen my feedback yesterday to the response to that correspondence that was prepared by staff. Thank you for that. So all that remains for me to ask, and I'll ask it now, recognizing that the response might be come at some later time, is does council know what is planned for the $150,000 budget? Can that plan be made public? And what comfort does council have that it will be adequate? I ask specifically because I understand that the plan has been prepared by the very same engineers who gave the very same bridges the clean bill of health the last time they inspected them. That doesn't give me any sense of comfort. Is council comfortable? The second point is, and this arises from my note, which will of course only appear in the agenda of the next meeting, having been addressed to council, but not in time for this agenda, is the infrastructure levy that we've been paying for 4 years. If not for this, what is it for? Again, I recognize I may not get an answer now, but those are my 2 pieces of public input for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Burr. Before I hand this off to Works Manager Jaffer, thank you very much for your correspondence and the follow-up one. I think that the whole critical bridge matter is going to be before council for some time, so I think it's not like it's going to go away anytime soon. Mr. Jaffer?
Yeah, former Mayor Burr, I'll respond post this meeting in detail to your questions submitted. The procedure for the bridge repair will be posted online as part of the bid process or the tender process. So you will be able to access that information.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sredsky, I see your hand is up. If you can unmute, you don't have to put your camera on if you don't, but you've got the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to make a comment in reference to a question that Councillor Norma Bernier had at the last meeting, asking if you have to answer the questions to the public. Again, he is not present today. as he misses many meetings, he comes totally unprepared, and he ignores the fact that this is not a private company, this is municipality, and yes, public has a right to speak and ask for certain clarifications. Would you please refer to him that, because he's obviously missing the purpose he put himself into the position. Secondary, I want to make clarification to our administrator in reference to his plans for a development on our street, multiple housing, 20 units, who knows what. Nothing of this must ever happen without consulting with the residents, and not just two next neighbors, but many, probably all of us, and this will become, regardless, an issue for the election. I just want to make clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for both of the questions, and lower your hand. To other gallery members, this would be an opportunity. Again, you can just raise your hand, unmute. You don't have to put your camera on if you choose not to. Oh, sorry, I got a couple here. I've got two, and we'll go with, I'm going left to right, three. How about we go with Mr. and Mrs. Lund, I see you, and then to Mr. Dunn, and then to Mr. Barber, and we'll close the participation after that. So Mr. and Mrs. Lund, you're unmuted, you're on the floor.
Good evening, all. Carl and Nicole Lund from 52 Brunswick. And the following is on behalf of numerous residents with regards to the village update titled Brunswick, Magnolia, and the Camera. We appreciate the village's efforts to beautify Brunswick, but far better choices could have been made here. Firstly, this planting area is exposed to direct all-day sun on a steep slope, so somewhat drought-tolerant plants were a poor choice for this location. It is more likely that replacement will be required due to lack of watering and erosion than possible theft. Secondly, a few disappearing plants do not warrant the installation of costly cameras. The wildlife cameras have far more value than the plants which they are protecting. And since the cameras were unmarked and not securely installed, there was zero deterrent to stop someone from taking the cameras. Thirdly, and most importantly, the cameras raise public privacy concerns as they have monitoring capabilities and were installed secretly and prior to pursuing provincial regulations, policies, and procedures for privacy and without public consultation. As for the alleged conversations of some Brunswick residents, to clarify, it was many villagers who discussed legitimate concerns over all of the above, serving as yet another example of the village's ongoing mismanagement, misspending, lack of transparency, disregard for public policy and regulations, and lack of public consultation. So our questions to council are, was the installation of these surveillance cameras a council, mayor, or CAO directive? Why were bylaws not informed of these cameras? Were these cameras being monitored? If so, by who? And what was being done with the data? What is the total cost for this surveillance system? And what operating budget does it fall under? Have these Brunswick cameras been relocated? And have other village cameras been secretly installed on public property throughout Lions Bay and Brunswick? I look forward to your answers.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lund. I'll ask the CAO to respond to that. And good questions all. Mr. Dunn, I'll go to you and then to Mr. Barber. Yep.
Hi, everyone. My first council meeting. Nice to meet you all. New resident in town. On a recent commute home, I noticed that the noise coming off the highway as I was driving got louder as I entered into the village. Thought it was a little weird that the road would be louder coming into the village. So I started asking around and found out that the asphalt on the highway through the village is actually supposed to be sound dampening. It's supposed to make the cars less noisy. What appears to be happening is that the highway surface has degraded to a point where it no longer dampens the noise. It actually amplifies it because of the rough surface that is now there due to the degradation of the highway. I took a rough decibel reading using my phone, certainly not accurate professional equipment, but it'll give us a ballpark sense of where we're at. And my math puts us at about a 70 to 75% increase in noise from the highway once you enter the village, and that's going at speed limit. So coming into the village at 80 and then slowing down to 70 and 60 as you come into the village. So it appears, I thought it was worth raising with you folks. It's my understanding that there may be an agreement in place with Modi for them to maintain the highway to standards set back when they first installed this sound dampening highway back in 2010, and thought that the data and what I dug up was worth tabling today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn. In particular, I appreciated the detailed piece of correspondence that you sent in. And if it's fine with you, I'll ask Public Works Manager Jaffer and perhaps the CAO to weigh in so we can equally articulate a response to you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. Mr. Barber?
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, you're good.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to speak. First time kind of tuning in to one of the council meetings. My concerns arrive with the Ocean View right-of-way lands potential options for development program or project that has been in camera for many months at this point. I want to express my concerns regarding this in behalf of all of our neighbors in the surrounding Ocean View neighborhoods. The development proposals seem to be quite intense and quite severe in nature. And there are multiple questions that I have. I did email you, Ron, some of those questions, but the biggest concerns for me arise with, what are the main factors that council uses to determine that this development should go forward? How much is the village willing to invest and subsidize this type of operation and project? Who would be paying for the possible infrastructure changes and developments that need to occur because they're quite substantial? The voices of the neighbors, what are our opportunities to share and influence the effect of the neighborhood? I think it will substantially change what we're trying to develop. I understand that the municipality is trying to densify and offer some opportunities for co-housing, shared housing, firefighter establishments, which I can appreciate, but the impact on neighboring people with the height restrictions and height limitations are substantial. So just trying to understand the bigger scope. I feel there's been some information shared, but not enough. And I'd like to understand more and understand why these cameras are always in session and what options we have as a residential community to have a voice. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You'll hear part of the discussion later on this evening. I make sure that your questions come forward to the staff and it becomes part of our ongoing discussion as however we move forward on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Barber. I appreciate you coming. Mr. Reuters, I think we've got time for one more. Mr. Reuter, not Reuters, apology.
Thank you. Am I coming through?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Thank you. I guess in reference to the preamble that the CAO provided, at least in part to this part of the meeting, it seems to me that in recent years, and especially lately, this council has become rightfully known and appreciated for listening to and working with residents, and particularly listening. And it's been inspiring, and you deserve a lot of credit for that. But lately, it seems to me some might be forgiven for feeling like they're watching in dread as a mortal illness threatens to take hold of the body of a cherished friend. And that body is, of course, our body politic. We've seen residents take the time to show up, be involved, and seek answers from council, but they haven't always gotten them. Sometimes they've gotten the slide or the dodge or the stroke, and they know it. And they deserve better. They deserve accountability and answers here in this public forum. I know it's not easy to attend to questions, given the many things that you've got to do, but it's necessary and it's vital. This isn't Vancouver or Toronto. This is Lions Bay, and this is just not how we do things here. Not attending to and caring for this vital connection between us, it's unthinkable. And it's also a form of suicide as we enter this new season. And that season is, of course, the one of our municipal elections. I implore you, do not let this become also the season of our discontent. Don't let this go any further. I urge anyone who would seek to sidestep the tough questions that residents bring to step back from this abyss, get us out of this darkness we're descending into and bring us back into the light. Return us to that positive interaction and relationship that we've built, that you've built with residents. It's a tender garden you've sown. Cherish it, nurture it, and it will provide a great bounty for all of us. Those are my comments.
And all of council, thank you for those comments. I look forward to actually to listening to the audio later this week. Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. That's pretty tough to follow up. Thank you again. That will close the participation part of the meeting. And I think we all understand what Mr. Reuter had to say. Nobody wants to slide, duck or not. Where possible, we would answer a question immediately, and we will ensure that everything is covered in the future. Which brings us up to item number 6, which is the minutes of May the 3rd. And I'll put forward the motion that the minutes of May the 3rd be approved as circulated. Councillor Cunliffe, will you second?
Second.
Thank you very much. NG, any changes, amendments, deletions? Councillor Abbott, Councillor Bain, any?
I had none.
No. Councillor Bain, I'm working on a bit of hardship here with the screen. Hang on.
No comment.
Thank you very much. All in favor, approval of the minutes, please defer by saying yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Next one, carried, May 5th, special council meeting. I'll put forward the motion that they're approved as circulated. Councillor Abbott, would you second?
Second,
Good. Any changes, amendments, deletions for this one?
not from me.
Councillor Bain, none? Good. Councillor Cunliffe, good. I'll call a motion. All in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Carried, thank you. Business arising from either of those minutes? I have none. Councillor Abbott, any?
no, I do not.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe, any?
No.
Councillor Bain, any?
None.
Thank you very much. Unfinished business. I think, what Works Manager Jaffrey, nothing new on the rail crossing signs?
No, nothing new.
Thank you very much. The vegetation program, other than what we've seen previously, CEO DeJohn?
Not at this point, no.
Nothing. And the last one at BC Forest Frame. I was at a conference where the Minister of Forestry was one of the speakers. I mentioned to my colleagues. And, well, I did get to meet the President and CEO of CN. The forestry minister, as soon as she'd finished, basically left with her entourage, and that was the end of the forestry piece. So this is still before us. And I think we'll give this another week or so before we go to a little higher level of getting a response from the minister on their stuff. But to cover off what I've written in the update, there has been no spraying for the last 10 years, none are contemplated. That's all well and good, but I think we'd like to see the whole thing eradicated from the Sea Sky corridor, and in particular, the area around us.
Just one comment, and that is that should say BC Timber Sales, not BC Forest Service.
Thank you very much.
And the second comment was, I think part of your follow-up was in respect of following up on what Metro was planning to do, because they had a number of points or initiatives or
Yes,
comments as well.
Thank you very much. And on that, Metro, thank you very much for the reminder. Metro has put out to the directors, and I believe the councillors as well, I think they've got the master of this, that at the Council of Councils, seems like, but I guess it was the first Saturday in April, it was brought up by one of the councillors from one of the metro areas, not the North Shore. And Metro's executive contacted BC Forest Services, Forest Sales, and they're following with them. So I think we'll be able to piggyback off Metro's involvement to get to the conclusion that we're looking for. I would expect to see the commissioner in the next 2 weeks when I'm live in the Metro meeting, and I'll confirm with that. We'll go back at our next council meeting. Again, it's being kept as unfinished business until it is finished business. That concludes that. Councillors, is there anything we should carry forward that should be, that is worthy of being held before us on unfinished business? I don't have anything. I think we've got it. Good. Thank you very much.
A comment, and I know that it's in correspondence later, but the highway noise, I don't think we ever resolved that, and I know staff are going to reply with some more facts back to the resident. So it sort of strikes me that somehow that should have still been on unfinished business, because we never really got a resolution, did we?
I believe CAO DeJong actually followed with the, if I got the right term, vacuuming of the findings was where we left it. And it seems like yesterday, but it was maybe 4 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the responses that we've had so far from Modi was that the contractor, Miller Cap, has been doing the maintenance program that they're supposed to do. And so we're, pushing on, especially with, the very interesting information that Mr. Dunn provided, suggesting that this is perhaps a bit of an eye opener, that Modi might want to follow up and do their own sound testing, and also that we're still waiting on what is the required or the end of life redo scheduled for the asphalt, for the sound dampening asphalt. So we have been continuously sort of poking and prodding as we go. But thank you, Mr. Dunn. Provides us with another opportunity to pursue another avenue. So we'll continue to do that.
There you go. And on that, Mr. Dunn, I think it was a good piece and it's a good refresher. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I think looking at my folder called Highway Noise over 3.5 years, we've got the documents. We know what their commitment is to us. And I think it's a refresher for us to follow up, as the CAO has mentioned. I look forward to seeing that in our next correspondence when we go to Mr. Dunn. And at that time, it may become unfinished business if there's still a door for us to follow. Are you fine with that, Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I don't think we got a satisfactory answer before, but yes, okay.
Let's hammer this down. I agree. It's 17,000 vehicles a day. And summer is perhaps upon us. All right, thank you very much. Next piece is the staff reports, which is item 9A. And that's to do with the Ocean View right-of-way lands potential auction for development. And that's on page 15 of your package. And the request be that council provide staff with direction on the matters outlined in this report. CAO, if you'd like to carry this forward for us.
Sure. So these sort of expansive right-of-way lands have been a topic of discussion and on council's list of strategic priorities to, consider and review options for potential development for a number of years. I know since the 6 years that I've been here, it's been on the table and in one way or another, mostly back burner, but and I understand that it was something that was discussed long before I came along as well. But in 2021, staff were directed to use their best efforts to advance ideas for potential development options. Didn't get too far, but with the engagement of the Fire Chief Andrew Oliver, he was able to interest a developer in taking a look at it. The idea being that perhaps we could come up with a concept whereby there was some multifamily to address the needs for some smaller housing, some opportunity to have some capital profit out of this to go towards replacement of our fire apparatus, because they're both coming due for renewal and they're expensive pieces of equipment. And as well, we have the issue of accommodating fire department members, which is becoming more and more difficult. So the idea was perhaps we can come up with some accommodation there as well. As council knows, we looked at that in closed meeting to begin with, because in the early stages of concept development, developer needs to be able to bring forward ideas, get feedback at a high level to know whether or not there's any point in continuing the conversation, drilling down on the details. So we went back and forth a little bit on this, but it became clear that for the developer to continue the level of development that they needed in order to make it financially viable was, in the neighborhood of 24 plus units. And council, I think rightfully felt that that was too dense, that it was too much. And so those discussions were terminated, and staff was asked to look at this, what other options exist, and bring back a report for the public consumption to talk about the very ideas that are laid out in this report. So I give a bit of a synopsis on the lay of the land, the history of the lands. It was interesting to find out from a longtime resident that it was at one point a gravel pit used by the Ministry of Transportation, or Ministry of Highways as it was known back then. And that it did have some water running through it, particularly during wet season. And we'd be well advised to do our due diligence in terms of geotechnical review, which of course we would do. The desired result in this exercise is to examine potential development of the lands in a manner that provides the greatest overall benefit to the village of Lions Bay. And ultimately, council is the arbiter of what constitutes, in the overall best interests of the village. And they do that with feedback and consultation with residents. So in all of the options that are spelled out here, there is definitely the intent to obtain feedback from residents, not just Ocean View residents. They obviously will perhaps be the most impacted by any development, but it's a matter that the whole community ought to be consulted on and will be consulted on if council wants to continue pushing forward with any of these options toward the options that are laid out. So those options, just very succinctly, are number one is sort of a mixed use multifamily and fire department housing development, but on a much smaller scale than what was previously discussed with the developer that was interested for a while. And so in terms of having 2 or 3 lots subdivided, you could put, obviously 3 single family lots. You could have multifamily on some of them. You could have multifamily on all of them. And the multifamily could be duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes. You could have a mix. Maybe one of them could be designated for purpose-built rental housing, with some of the units restricted for fire department members at non-market rates, and maybe some at market rates. The options are wide open. Any number of ways that you could configure that. That would address the need for some smaller housing and obtain sufficient capital, one would hope, from the upzone land to fund the purchase of new fire apparatus, or I suppose it's really, there's no need or requirement to designate capital obtaed from the development of the lands for that purpose. But I do note that it is at present an unfunded or a looming issue that's going to need to be dealt with very shortly. Second option is essentially, again, multifamily, but just market value sales of fee simple strata lots. Council would determine what sort of zoning they would carry, and then list them for sale, and an appraisal would establish what the optimum land values would be dependent on density options, and those would need to obviously be weighed against feedback that is obtained from residents. Third option would be subdivision simply into 3 single family lots, selling those on the open market. Again, of the options, it would be the simplest, but the lands are, as noted in the report, somewhat challenging to work with. And there is potential, given changing market conditions, for the lots to sit a little while in the market An appraisal would provide some guidance on comparable land values for single family versus multifamily and what could be expected. In the follow-up action section of the report, I lay out all of the steps that I can identify at this point that would be required in order to continue down the path of looking at options for development of these lands. And, at the first council meeting, the consideration would be for direction regarding further research on the historical use of the lands, for example, with Modi and the longtime owners in the vicinity of the lands. Do some preliminary geotechnical review of the lands, including test pits and geohazard for steep slopes, and invite, of course, public comment on the preliminary concepts that have been identified for development options. And then following from that, at each subsequent meeting, I've laid out sort of the progression of steps that would be required to be considered. And council at any step of the way can go one way or the other, or church the whole thing. I would expect that because of the process, as you can see, it's laid out, would take some time. I imagine that ultimately, it will be in the hands of a new council at the end of the day. And so I guess, it's up to this council to decide, do they want to embark on an exercise to begin the path. But I think obviously step number one is to get some feedback from the public with respect to this report and the options that are laid out in it, some of the challenges that are identified, and some of the different ways that could be different paths that could be followed.
Thank you very much, CAO. And I will do a little bit more on the background, and then I'll rotate around the councillors on any discussion points or questions they have. Firstly, CAO, could you confirm that while we did meet in camera on this, the reason was that the developer did not authorize us to reveal the details that he put forward to us to the public?
There was fairly detailed concept plans with some fairly detailed economic numbers that the developer had provided, and of course those were confidential. So
thank you very much. And the second piece is that at the conclusion of that meeting, we reported out that council advised the developer that in future his representations were to be made in public. I believe you recall that as well.
That would be recorded in the minutes, I presume.
Yes, it is. Thank you. To the next piece, I think on a bigger picture to why do we sell properties? And on this council's term, we've sold 2 properties that we have developed from technically called road ends, or calling them this month, but that we developed into lots. And on that, and the CFO can correct me if I'm too far off, we've generated $2.7 million in this council's term. Of that $2.7 million, about 800,000 of it, or thereabouts, went to acquire waterfront property at the end of Brunswick Road. And the balance has been left in our treasury. And part of that treasury has been used to assist villagers in other funding. And if you are one of the proud residents of Kelvin Grove, and last year you received your tax bill for payment of the sewage treatment plant on the easy 10-year plan, that was courtesy of the village of Lions Bay, who funded it internally at what would now be considered an extremely preferred rate and an extremely lucrative term. And that's where the money went to, and we're assisting our villagers with that. The balance, I suspect, is as the money comes back from the KG plant users, and the balance will be used against return borrowing for other projects. So I think that's why we do this. And the lead time for these things, I think for the first property I'm thinking of in Brunswick, I think it was, the listing period was over a year, the development period probably similar to a year. The same thing for our KG 35 kg way, about the same time, CAO, just about 2 years.
Listings for both were well over a year.
Yeah,
close to
so
more like 2 years. So
these things don't happen quickly, and it takes a fair amount of thought. So a little bit more additional background on a variety of things, how we got to this point and where we are. This particular property is the one that has council's eye at the moment, and that's where we're talking about it today. So that said, I'm going to rotate through the councillors. Councillor Bain, if you've got any questions for the CAO or the staff team, or any thoughts, concerns, and I'm even fine if you want to put forward your favorite recommendation.
Well, sort of none of the above. Based on page 18, the part I take note of is the first council meeting direction would have A, further research on historical use of the lands, and B, primarily geotechnical review of the lands, including test pits for potential subsurface issues and hazards associated with steep slopes. And it comes to mind, I think I'm glad the CAO has put that as a first step, because I think what we need to do is think of the tolerance on the land as to what can be done there before we start coming up with great plans, and tolerance on what the residents can tolerate or advocate for. And that definitely has to be the first step, or else we're just plain wasting our time if we don't get a happy result of that. That's my opening comment.
Thank you very much. CAO, any thoughts, comments on that? That's pretty much in your recommendation.
yeah, I think that's step one. But I mean, before taking that step, I guess council would need to confirm that you're interested in continuing to explore options, because otherwise we'd be wasting money on geotechnical
Thanks very much.
engineers.
Councillor Abbott, your thoughts, questions, and comments, and again, if you have a preferred direction, would you share it with us?
Well, first of all, I guess I'll go along the line, the path that Councillor Bain started with there. First meeting, 3 different steps we want to do. I don't see why we can't do step C first if we did anything. And I'd also like to point out, for us to do the geotechnical review, by the time we've put our RFP, awarded that to someone, and they've dug some holes and probably taken some samples and gone back to a lab and submitted a report, I don't think this council will even get to second meeting, never mind the end of this. So the question to me is it fair for us to even start down this path? I think this is, and spending money on something that the next council may or may not see as a priority. So for me, I think, there's lots of things going on at the moment. We've had lots of discussions about other things staff are trying to do, particularly the workshop manager, the CEO, with project management on things when we're planning on spending money on consultants there. And I don't think we should spend any more time on this year, to be honest.
Thank you very much.
And if we did anything, I would say get the public's feel first. I have some other more technical questions about zonings and what was permitted or not, but if we decide to go any further, I have some more questions, but if we go down that path, that's my opening comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Cullen.
I'm going to agree with Councillor Abbott that the number one thing, and I don't see that it would be a waste of time to do it during this council. It'll give direction to the next council, is to invite the public and get their consultation and what they would foresee those lands being used for. If it dies at this council, then the next council doesn't have to spend any time on it at all. Just to comment on subsidizing housing for firefighters. In theory, that's a wonderful idea, but I do know that the Whistler Housing Authority now for resident housing is building at $550 a square foot. And that's in ideal conditions, in a high rise that's simple. They're constructing on site. They're prefabbing and putting it on site. I don't think that even at 860 square feet for a small unit, that's like $475,000 times 6 of those, $2.8 million. I don't think that that's something reasonable that we are in a position to even entertain. Unfortunately, it'd be wonderful, but That's just my comment on that, but I would be in favor of at least inviting the public to provide some feedback on how they feel about the land.
So just to clarify, the intent was not for the village to act as a developer. So that would not be us investing 2.8.
It would be the
whatever.
developers.
The developer would have to obviously look at, okay, what's the land zone for, what's being allowed here? And, can I make a profit?
I still think it would be very cost prohibitive. If we were subsidizing it and we could provide it at cost just to regain. So I don't see a developer looking at that as attractive at all, unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
Can you mention what the land zoned for? So that's one of the questions I had. If this was a single lot owned by a resident, the only thing that's been suggested here that meets our zoning plan is 2 single-family lots.
3. Could be 3 single family.
Well, okay, not in the configuration you have, because the zoning reads you have to have one of at least 800 and the other one's over 700, right?
You could have 3 at 8,000 square feet. The lots could be, you could have on.
It's 800, you have to have one lot at 800 square meters and the other one at least 700. So anyway, I mean, maybe you can squeeze it in there. I guess you'd have 200, 700 and one at 820. Okay, I suppose you could, but it's not the way you've drawn it out anyway, but they'd have to be smaller than that. So I'm not sure how practical that would be. But anyway, you mentioned zoning. I don't really want to go there. I do think that we should have the higher level discussion first. What are we doing, if anything?
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. I think I'll close on the first round of discussion on this. Been by the property lots. I think that property itself would appear to be challenging in terms of it doesn't have an ocean view unless you build very high, which would likely be over heights. It's facing hydro lines. It's a wonderful street, I'll grant you that. So I think, and also in terms of the village's ease and what we're trying to do, I would see this as single family lots. I'm open to multi if somebody wants to do that and they come back to us with that. But I think in terms of the information piece, I'd be interested with what our skilled realtors within the village might think the property could do, would do. I'd rely on their expertise. What sizes of lots are they looking at? Is 3 the right number? Is it 2 or is it 1? I don't know. So I think I would be going on that direction in the easy to obtain information to push this one down. Not far down the road, but probably within either the next council meeting or the one after so that we could move on it. I think delaying it to the next council is could be done. I mean, it's the reality is, I mean, Councillor Abbott and I can both look at the calendar and say our next meeting's in June. There's 2 meetings there, 2 in July. We're gone for August and September. We're a dead duck council, lame duck, not dead duck, lame duck council. So because there aren't meetings then. So I mean, I think in terms of doing a bit of investigation, that's where I see that we go. Valuing staff's time, doing this on the free point of view from the realtors. I agree. I don't think we should be doing studies. Councillors, I'll go back to you. That would be my guidance to staff. I'll go in reverse order. Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah, I would be in favor of getting some realtors' eyes on the land and seeing how realistic it even is to pursue.
There you go. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that to get a report. I just think the next council should frame the questions and then go to the public. I don't see any merit in us doing anything more right now, and I do think we should, with what little time's left, we should be encouraging staff to focus on some of these projects that we have on the go.
I don't disagree, but that said, I think I'm keen on the baby step here with no further on this. Councillor Bain, your thoughts?
I just echo what our colleagues have already just said. I'm fine with that.
Thank you very much. So if I got this right, then perhaps a few phone calls to the realtors so we get an idea what they think, and then we'll go from there. Colleagues, is that your view of this? And we'll leave it with the CAO over there.
I mean, you're not going to get an appraisal that you can rely upon. You need to have an appraiser if you want to get an appraisal of the lands and determine what size and best use and what the market value is. And that's the way to go about doing it.
100%. They're not developers. They don't know. They're going to sell a property.
You know, we've seen in the past, you get a wide variety of opinions about price and we've been through the experience of having properties sit for a long time on the market. So my suggestion would be that if you want to get an idea as to value and in different configurations, then the way to do that is to seek an appraisal and to allocate, up to probably going to cost $3,000 to $5,000 for a proper appraisal. So.
Well, that pretty much put an end to the conversation.
And that's an appraisal without a geotech. And they're going to wonder what the geotech's going to cost. And then we're going to spend 5 to 10 grand on a geotech.
And
Now we're
then we
spending
circle
money.
back to public consultation as the start.
Mr. Barber, I'm going to ask you to mute. It's not an interactive discussion.
If I may, I with all due respect to the ideas of getting an appraisal or informal opinions of realtors, I think step one is go to the public and get their feedback on this report and their thoughts about what, the options that have been laid out and find out what they think. And that should be step one.
What would your proposal be?
Do first council meeting direction number C, invitation to public for comment on preliminary concepts for development options. See what comes back, have another discussion, decide what you want to do next, if anything, at that point.
Now, would we host that in the form of a have your say, or are we open to a town hall at this point? Is it too premature for a town hall?
Yeah,
I think that is effective.
we don't have props and pretty maps and concepts to provide to people. I think it's a case of village update piece that directs people, has a link to the report, is asking them to, giving them the opportunity to have their say. It's a have your say piece, but not necessarily a mail drop, but that might come as we progress down the road. Here's some, if you go down the road and then you drill down on some concepts and you push that one aside and you're focusing on these two and you want some more feedback from the public as between these two, which one, then yeah, for sure, everybody gets a mail drop and you want as much feedback as you can get, maybe a town hall at that point. But at this point, I think it's just a village update, have your say, have a link, get as much feedback from the public as we can at this point in time, find out what people think.
All right, I'm kind of going back to Councillor Abbott's views. I think knowing the items that we're going to be talking about later on this evening and basically staff's time and what we're trying to achieve here, if in the perfect world of everybody in Lions Bay responds, now we've got a lot of data that we're going to ask staff to analyze and come forward, and it's summer, and is this the biggest thing on our plate? My answer is no, and I think Councillor Abbott is correct on this one. So I'd be happy to park this one.
I think if the new council phrased the questions and got involved, it's going to be current and active information where we're going to actually say, come back and say, well, we shouldn't be doing anything, park it, then it becomes stale and old. And residents say, oh, you asked our questions, we have your answer, what are you doing about it?
There's an expectation, and you're right. And again, back to if the new council is looking at this, I mean, the reality of new council, they're sworn in November, it's suddenly December, we're in January pretty quickly, and then they're having their strategic meeting, which is when they flesh out this stuff. And that would actually be the right time for this to do it and say, and that'll be part of the CFO's discussion. If we got this for that, it goes to that kind of thing. So I think my recommendation following Councillor Abbott's lead on this, that now that we flesh this out, we just park this for the time being.
I'm happy that, can I just interject for one moment? Can you, Peter, please check and see if there's anybody who's trying to
Oh, yeah.
join the meeting? Thank you. I would concur. Park it.
Okay, Councillor Bain, you want to close the loop on this one?
Oops. Yeah, I'm much as Jamie and Neville have said, and yourself, I'm fine with that.
Thank you very much. All right, CAO, I think you've got your direction. So in a roundabout way, it's one less thing
It's parked.
on your plate. There we go. Thank you. Item number 2, request a decision, and that's regarding the sublease of a portion of the LBFR training ground crown lease. And the recommendation is that, subject to approval by the provincial crown, council approves a sublease to LTS Infrastructure Services Limited Partnership by its general partner, LTS Solutions Ltd, also known as Ledcor, of crown lease number 235083 for Village of Lions Bay fire training and storage purposes on Brunswick Hill, and renewals thereof in substantially the form attached to this report titled sublease of a portion of LBFR training ground crown lease. And secondly, that staff proceed with seeking the approval of the provincial crown accordingly. And thirdly, that the mayor and the corporate officer are authorized to execute the sublease agreement and any provincial crown documents pertaining to their approval. Councillor Bain, can you put that forward?
I will.
Thank you. Councillor Kennel, for your second.
Second.
CAO, back to you.
So we were approached by Ledcor who is going to be doing some system upgrades for TELUS and looking for a storage area or staging area for some of their equipment and supplies. I suggested that perhaps best thing would be that they contact the lands department and or Modi for potential areas in the pit. They came back and said that the only way it was going to work, and I got joined in the conversation with the lands agent, that they don't do short-term leases, and but that they would probably be fine with us doing a sublease of a particular area within our own devised premises. So we explored that, and the fire chief and Kent McLean, local resident who works for Ledcor, figured out an area that could be used for that purpose in the yard, the present fire training facility at Brunswick Pit. And so the terms were hammered out at $2,500 a month plus GST for a minimum of 6 months and a maximum renewal term of another 6 months if they need it. And yeah, just council approval is being sought, subject to provincial crown approval, which is required. So if the crown says no, then it won't happen. But first step is if council is agreeable.
Colleagues, any questions?
I just have one. Preferred option, option 1. And then it says, as it will provide additional funds for the fire department, purpose to be determined. So purpose to be determined by whom? My question. And I'll try and answer it. I'm good with it, but I hope it's going to be something that we get to determine how it's used, and it gets used on the key equipment that we end up spending every year or something of that nature. But not anything that's not non-critical.
Yeah, I think it's probably a conversation that we need to have in terms of ideas for how it would be best spent, what options are available, and yeah, the council needs to approve of that. It was not enough time to try and nail down a designated purpose.
Yeah, my question is, I mean, when I wrote in my notes is by who? So is it the fire department to get $15,000 to spend discretionary? Or I would prefer to say this $15,000 is the first $15,000 or for next year's fire department requests for whatever equipment they need for next year.
Well, I think that probably, you know, if I may, without having had this conversation with Chief Oliver, I imagine that, his thought on it would be that they're giving up some of their space within their training compound. And that at the very least, they ought to have a say in how that money to be gained from doing that should be spent. So they would, we certainly want to be having a conversation as to what it gets spent on, but at the same time, it's, it is the municipality that is the contracting party and creates the budgets and so forth. But at the same time, recognizing that there are both taxpayer-funded budgets and there are budgets that over which the fire department generally has more say because they've contributed in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's probably a conversation, and hopefully it would be result in a concurrence of opinion as to a mutually satisfactory purpose for which the funds would be spent. But yeah, it's a conversation.
Conversation should have,
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting anyone's going to be frivolous, but I wouldn't like to be spent on more expensive jackets.
And just up front, I did not have that conversation with Chief Oliver, so I'm paraphrasing my own thoughts about, what that might look like.
Okay.
So.
Councillor Bain, any questions?
No, I don't see a downside to this. I think it looks good. Thanks.
Councillor Coniff?
No, looks totally reasonable to me.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Any thoughts, concerns? Nope. Call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Carried. Thank you. Yeah. And next piece is the Public Works Manager, and this is regarding the bridge deck joint repairs response to correspondence, and that's Mayor Burr's correspondence. And
Sorry, I just, as I was flicking through this, I just noticed one thing, and I meant to say it here. This old attachment here says that the lease term is for 20 years, which means it's expired. There is a new one.
Yeah, what I attached is the original lease,
Okay.
because it had a copy, the last page had here's the land,
Right.
but I said in the opening
That has been
resolution,
renewed.
it's the lease as described and renewals thereof. I just, the renewals don't have the full terms.
I didn't think we were trespassing 14 years. But I just wanted,
Yeah.
okay, all right, fair enough.
I think we called the motion, and I think
Then are we all done?
we're all done. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, it's goes to the municipal coordinator, just making sure that we did pass it. Thank you very much. Public Works Manager, and this, your piece here on item 3 is on the bridge deck joint repairs response correspondence, which was Mayor Burr and which we brought forward in the public participation. And I know this is going to be an ongoing piece, and we'll see it in future correspondence or perhaps in an updated report, however you do. Could you walk us through a bit of this?
Sure. So the bridge deck joints have failed. It's actually the approach, the asphalt approach to the bridge deck joints or bridge decks. And what happens is when that happens, vehicle impacts on the bridge deck cause cracking and spalling. The Cross Creek Bridge has had a hole develop in the deck, exposing the rebar. If left unmanaged or undealt with, the corrosion will continue and result in more significant damage. So that's basically what the repairs are for this year, is to address 7 out of the 8 bridges. The deck joints will be repaired, and then the damage that has happened, including the hole in the Cross Creek Bridge and some of the damage to the Isleview Bridge, as well as the bridge on Lions Bay Avenue, will also be corrected at that point.
Thank you very much.
And I should add that Mayor Burr has further questions that will be answered in due course after the meeting.
Thank you very much. So you'll be ready to him, copy to council, and we'll see it again, either as a follow-up report, or I think I'd prefer to see it in a follow-up report versus in correspondence, if that's fine with you, Public Works Manager.
Absolutely.
Just an update so we can see it at the front of the meeting and not back. Thank you. Councilors, any questions for the Works Manager on this one? I think this one's going to be before us for a while. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I mean, Carl's done sort of fairly detailed analysis of his own and asked some questions, which Nai's answered. As I was going through both pieces of communication from the workshop manager back to Carl, my initial concern was on this budget as I started to read this, and Carl Beer actually started off with the point of view that, why were we spending so much and did we need this? And I think one of his later comments was, maybe, do we have enough? And I sort of from the workshop manager point of view, now I'd like to understand, at what point do we think we're going to have a estimate on this? And what are your feelings on, or is that going to only be after we go out and start getting some contractor pricing on RFP?
So the scope of work was identified by ISL Engineering's bridge engineer and structural engineer. Both of those individuals with ISL inspected each of the bridges, put together a remediation plan and a budget cost to do those repairs. And that's basically how the dollar amount came into being. Their unit rates are from recent work that's been done in the last 1 or 2 years. So it's fairly fresh. So yeah, I won't confirm what the market will do, but it's the best estimate that I could get at the present time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think everyone knows escalation in the last 2 years has been bizarre. No one can predict it. However, this is more a labor-based cost here, so one would hope there's not too much escalation that's going to sneak in, because labor rates haven't gone up significantly. Certainly not the cost of materials have. I think
You're absolutely correct. Yes,
this is largely an hourly based, a labor rate event. So hopefully the estimate is good. Okay. There was one other thing that got touched on here, and it's on, I don't know, page 49, I guess. This idea of the infrastructure committee. I think everyone knows my opinion. I, for one, believe having other people, other professionals, have a sort of peer review or cold eye review or critical look at what other person's come up with is immensely beneficial. I think we should always do it. Carl is not he's an engineer, but this is not his field. And we've discussed before what the infrastructure committee could look like. I had an idea, which I shared, that I thought it should be a pool of residents somehow. I hadn't considered there was a select committee, which is what Carl has mentioned here, which is an interesting option. Is there any appetite on this particular issue, or to have a select committee and see if there's a structural engineer in the village that wants to give some time to brainstorm where this is going and see if there's any other options?
So if I might, essentially what we've had ISL structural engineer and bridge lead inspect and prepare the scope of work. I'm not sure what you would have in speaking to another structural engineer. This type of work is pretty regimented, and it's defined by the Canadian bridge standards and MODI maintenance standards on bridges. So it's pretty defined and distinct work that's outlined in those regulations and guides.
No, one never knows what comes up in these meetings, and sometimes nothing, and that's great as well. Maybe there isn't anything.
Yeah, my concern would be the timing for this. It's quite important that this work is done in the heat of the summer, and hopefully that will arrive soon. Also, with respect to BC Bid is undergoing a complete refresh and will be going live on May 31st. So yeah, my concern would just be around timing and setting this up and how we would go about it.
So when was this RFP tender process meant to go out?
The intent would be as soon as BC Bid is refreshed, so probably the beginning of June, and it would be open for 3 to 4 weeks with the intent of completing the work in August, July or August.
Okay. Well, it doesn't give any time to have any input on the RFP process.
Thank you very much. Councillor Callahan, any questions on this? Again, it's going to be.
Thank you, Nye.
We'll have an update on this in a variety of pieces, the first meeting in June, and a correspondence back to Mayor Burr from Public Works Manager. So that'd be just great. So Councillor Bain, any questions, or are you fine as things stay?
No further questions.
There you go. Councillor Abbott, can you put forward the motion to receive?
Yeah, put forward the motion to receive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe, can you second?
And yep,
Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Thank you very much. Carried. Next item is the CAO verbal report on Bear Smart enforcement matters. And Councillor Abbott, are we calling it Bear Smart or Bear Friendly? I don't want to trip
You
up.
got it wrong again. It's bird friendly, bear smart.
I need the t-shirt. Think about it. Thank you very much. CAO.
Yeah, so as per previous conversations, I can confirm that the bylaw officers, we do have a bylaw officer doing a late shift on Thursdays, and with the idea being looking out for people who are putting their garbage and recycling out early. And I say both garbage and recycling because oftentimes recycling can have food contamination that can act as an attractant. So people shouldn't just assume that they can put their recycling out either. I think what we're doing is warnings on recycling, but if there's any food waste or food contamination at all, then it's a ticket. So yeah, we're trying to get that same message out that we did last year, a program that we did last year as well. It's a little bit tricky with some of the driveways that have multiple residences on them, identifying whose container it is, but officers have been requested to be diligent and do their due diligence on that. So there are additional materials in terms of what was received today, suggestions with respect to initiatives that we can look at, and maybe I can turn that over to Councillor Abbott in respect of those initiatives.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, apologies everyone for getting this the last minute, but literally last night got together and did a bit of brainstorming, and those who aren't aware of the bear activity, there is a fair amount of bear activity at the moment, and it's a big concern, so it's not something that could wait, certainly not another council meeting. So hence we threw this out early this morning. Got a bit of a refresh on it this afternoon. I just before I come back to the list of bullets, I just want to go, I'll jump to the background and go a little bit through what we know. So the first thing, the Lions Bay Bear Smart group have a website. We had one last year. We set it up last year. And one of the functions or functionality of that website is you can click on a button that allows you to report a bear sighting. We have had up till yesterday, before yesterday, 21 reports of sightings, of bear sightings, which is significantly more than we had last year. And these are only effectively first-hand reports. There's been at least as many, or if not more, on Facebook as well, that I've seen. And we haven't, one of the functions I was hoping to have done at time to do was gather that information, try to correlate it with this. But there's a lot more bear activity than the sightings that are reported, I can tell you that much. And these sightings certainly seem to be a lot more than we've seen in previous years. My first hope or feeling, well, it was a hope, I guess, was that maybe it was just that, you know, there was more connectivity with social media these days. And so therefore we are hearing more about it. But that's definitely not the case. We have lots of anecdotal kind of statements on Facebook. And I quoted one year, in my 20 years of living here, we've never seen so many bears and so frequently. And I think I can say that as well. That's my feeling. And hopefully it's not just because I'm the one that's focused on this, but I think a lot of people are telling me the same thing. What's causing it? It's the coldest May in years. So there's no berries and natural foods for the bears out there. But unfortunately, we're compounding that by bad garbage and storage practices within the village. And that's what we need to focus on. And that's these points I'll be coming to in a minute, the suggestions. Just so you understand where it happens in the village, if you look at what was reported on our website, 5 reports Bayview Place, 6 on Mountain Drive, Ocean View and Ocean View Place, had 4, Sunset had 3. Looking around the Facebook posts, Ocean View had a bigger number than those ratios, until so did Sunset. So it's pretty clear the problem area is the roads up near the forest above us, on the east side of the village. And because those are all the roads around there, and centered on either side of where the big problem area was last year, which was kind of Bayview Place. So that's the epicenter. And we've had no reports outside of those areas, or Timber Tops included in that same zone, and as is Upper Bayview, but outside of those streets in the area, there's been no reports. It's not to say there hasn't been a bear, and I'm sure we'll get some reports afterwards telling me, yeah, there was one down on Lions Bay Avenue. But so those are the areas we want to focus on, because that's definitely where all, if not the majority, of the activity is. So one of the things we came up with last night. And first of all, what are we trying to do? We're trying to ensure that there's no bear kills this year. We've had a great record since Bear Smart was put in of no bear kills. Last year, we got nervous. It was one trap set. It was removed actually because of the heat dome. It was considered inhumane to trap in the heat dome, and the bear moved on at the same time, so that was fortunate. This year, starting earlier, we really hope we don't get to that point, but we are really concerned. We'd like to get staff support on doing a special village update, which when we spoke last night, we were hoping to do this week before Friday, i.e. on Thursday, which means we'd have to write it tomorrow. But that's all dependent on what we come up with tonight and which of these things we can put in place in such short notice, and which have to wait. Direct request to the workshop is, there's a program called No Mo May. It started in the UK. I know Vancouver City does it. in certain areas, if not everywhere. And what it is, it's, people are encouraged not to mow lawns or sort of dandelions, anything else that's out there during the month of May. In our case, because it's stuff that bears will go eat. But the other reason to do it, and the bigger reason to do it is, as bigger reason to do it is because it's the time when all the pollinators are coming to that, all the bugs and things that are in the ground that have sort of been there over the winter are now coming out. So it's just a good environmental practice. And I asked Nye, or as council, we can support Nye in not to be trimming villages for the next month or so, at least until there's berries in the forest and the bears start to. Bylaw enforcement, Peter's touched on that. I've certainly noticed that we have not had the parking hiker problems that we expected to have so far this year. Not sure the reason. Is it because people have gone back to normal traffic patterns? Normal travel patterns and are now, going to their cabins and other places they might have gone, possibly, or the weather, which has been kind of cool. But there was more traffic in the winter on a clear day than I've seen in the last few weekends. There's other things going on those weekends. This one wasn't particularly great. Mother's Day was the previous one. I don't know. We haven't got this proof. There's definitely a lot less traffic. So request, to staff and to Peter is there a way we can, reallocate the direction or the focus of bylaw, potentially reallocate their shifts. So we use some of that bylaw hours that we plan to be doing on parking right now when there isn't much going on, and be more focused on these activities. But the big thought and the big ask, and this goes back to Nye, and I did speak to Nye on Friday last week, and he obviously saw this earlier, and I didn't have a chance to join him, but the big thought is, the main idea is, can we schedule WCS? Can we schedule them to do the problem areas, and can we sort of pin them down to a window of time? And then we would like to go out to residents and say, don't have to rush out and get your bin out before 7:30 in the morning, because they're not coming by until whatever time in your area, and please try do it just in time. And at the same time, we're going to ask people to speak to your neighbors. If they have to go out to work and they can't do things just in time, then maybe you can accommodate them. If there's anyone in my street, bring up your bin, I'll put it out for you. Those kind of actions, so we can try get the food and the attractants at the curbside for the least amount of time. And we think that can probably make a big difference. So I'll just read through the bullets that we had. They were the top of the resolution. I guess this maybe is not a resolution, it's more an ask, but we can decide if we need a resolution. So the first one, instruct waste control services to schedule waste collection such a problem as prioritized, publish a special VU to advise the collection schedule prior to this week's pickup. Temporary setup, that was another one. We used to have a bear-proof dumpster outside of the fire hall. It used to stand there all year round. We spoke about this last year. I know the reasons why it's been moved and the reluctance, but I think if we can just set one up for the next few months, I don't know where the place is, and tell people that there's a bear-proof dumpster. If you cannot meet, the window of scheduling when you put your waste out, can you please go put it in the dumpster? We want to create a mailbox flyer and the insert style, because that certainly gets more gets seen by more people than the Village Update or even Facebook. We know that from previous. And that would obviously wouldn't be able to do it for this week, but certainly hope to do it for next week. Create some more informational signages, put them on notice boards. Then as I said, support and promote No Mow May, both from the village work staff as well as from residents. Ask them, just don't cut your lawn. There's been lots of reports of the bears eating on people's lawns, just only like a cow, munching on the lawn. We would rather they're eating on the lawns or eating the dandelions on the side of the street, and then they're trying to get, you know, they're foraging in someone's yard to try to get into their garbage or their shed or whatever. And we know they seek out the more high energy foodstuffs, but you know, at least if there is other things they could munch on, that might divert a bit of that practice. And then, you know, BAO shifts, can they be adjusted to prioritize best smart issues? And then generally, if we could all promote the Lions Bay Bay website reporting tool. Council members have posted pictures on Facebook. Others have sent emails around and we haven't reported. If we can get all the information in one place, we're starting to understand. There was talk of the Big Bear. Everyone's been talking about it. Well, now we know there's two, because we have evidence of one with a tag, and the other one, the Big Bear, the really big one, doesn't. We have, you know, we can see a big bear in two different streets, half an hour apart. So it sounds like it could be the same bear because you could have walked there. But if we had more information, we might be able to say, well, it can't be the same bear because it was reported here and here. So the more information they get, the better we can do. You know, there's a mother with two cubs. We thought at the beginning, people we're only seeing one of the cubs at a time, but there's a mother with two cubs. There's another mother with a cub as well. So all this information really helps us. And then what we're trying to do is, does it direct us to a problem area? Is there an attractant there? Can we go out there and correct the behavior? The last thing we want to do is have to call in the conservation office. That's, you know, when we're going to feel we failed. But at some point, if it comes to that, we will have to do what we have to do. But, you know, people need to understand, by reporting to our website, they're not reporting to the conservation office, because the conservation officers triggers when they'll act, and they don't act on normal behavior, but it helps us to make sure we don't get to those triggers. Then the last thing we wanted, and Peter, I don't know how we do this, but there are half a dozen food grocery delivery services that service the village. We could get you a list of them. I could, you know, with just polling a few neighbors and friends, tell you the ones we use and the ones that others use. Can we send something to them telling them that they should not be or cannot be, because actually they're breaking our bylaw, leaving food outside when no one's home? So those are all my bullets. I don't know who wants to start where, and I know it's a lot to take in.
If I may, let me stir you a little bit. You've caught everybody's attention. I'm going to say that all of council's on side, and I appreciate the work that this group has done to get us to where we are. But even what you've shown is how much more work we need to do to get really to the platinum stage. So one question, and I'll go through your stuff. I'll open it up just a second, Works Manager. Is I'm going to call it the dumpster, or very smart dumpster, because I don't think they figured out how to do that yet. At the fire hall, that's going to be, if it was like it was before, big honking thing. Yep.
Yeah, but if you can rent smaller bear-proof dumps, they would be even better. But I don't think you can.
That would be the
Construction zone. We hope to tender any day.
Okay, so it's not the fire hall.
It's not going to be a good location.
So where is it?
And the thing is that when that was done previously, it became subject of abuse.
We know all the issues and why it was taken away. We can know all of those issues.
We'll shame people in that one. So, but where would a good location be?
I
That's a big request, isn't it?
That's a big request, and it's only for a short period. And where can we do it?
Works yard?
Well,
Make sure people can't get there after hours, but they could be outside the workshop, I guess.
I'm going to go to the Works Manager in a second. I'm trying to think of the gate, and I don't see one to the side, right beside the hydro stuff. There's a little spot there. Okay, there's a spot.
Not our land.
It's not our land.
Hydro's land.
And they use that for parking when they maintain the hydro station.
School parking lot.
Right.
Parking right.
Parking right?
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
Eat up a couple of stalls.
fine.
This is a bigger issue, I think, than a couple of stalls.
Well, I'm fine with that. Are you good with that, Councillor?
To one side of the parking ride where it narrows down to where you haven't got a full car depth, you might not even take over more than a stall.
Well, for the month of May, it's not a heavy usage spot, and it's certainly not used for what it was intended for. So I think you're probably looking for something over, let's call it bear season for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
And then going in the winter. Okay. Well, let's start with that one. CAO, would you see an objection to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to put that as far away from the travel spots as possible. So not sure about down by the water, but I guess this is for residents who cannot meet the schedule. So hopefully that's not very many.
Yep.
But I would also hope that the idea is that any such residents are firstly encouraged to turn to their neighbors for assistance in putting out their trash if the neighbor happens to be around and is able to do that for them.
So I mean, this ended up as the third bullet, but it was the last thing we discussed, and it was the last resort. And actually, it was the final thing that I just ended up shuffling out the list. So,
again, Councillor, I'm trying to
we're not
through your approvals.
Yeah, so we're not. So just
a location. It's you're looking for concurrence from staff and council. I'm going to say yes. Councillor Cunoff, yes. Councillor Bain, yes. Staff.
Just not a permanent location, but I think that's the best spot.
It's the best one.
So to Peter's point, we're not going to tell people, please go put your stuff in the dumpster. That's going to be the last resort.
So look, we dealt with the bin, and actually it turns out to be quite a centralized location. So, and it's, easy parking, easy throw. So that's that technical piece. So in Councillor Abbott, you're going to get this into the update and do the fire and brimstone on what you put in there and when.
Yeah, I'd have to work with Nye just to understand how and when it's emptied and how we go about.
So specialized signage for the bin as well.
You've got some other stuff I'm going to come back to, Councillor Abbott, but I saw the works manager's hand was up for a second. Did you want to weigh in for a second, Mr. Jaffer, or are you good?
Yeah, no, with your permission, Your Worship.
Yeah.
First off, I'd like to thank Councillor Abbott for providing the information early this morning. I was able to reach out to Waste Control and they are on board. They intend to reroute their trucks to pick up Mountain Drive, Bayview Place, Ocean View Place and Road, Sunset Drive and Highview Place between the hours of 7:30 and 9 a.m. So all those areas will be hit first before the other areas in the village.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, you're kind of going 2 for 2 so far tonight, Works Manager. Thank you for good news. Okay, through your.
I will. Go ahead.
Keep going.
So the only concern I have, and it might not be a big concern with the park and ride, is we do have a bear-proof garbage can there. And typically we have a problem with excess garbage being dumped in that bear-proof bin, household garbage typically, and the bin's overflowing. So we constantly have to go there. So my concern would be that the bin would be abused. But again, with the messaging and perhaps some signage on the bin, we might be able to alleviate that.
For me, Councillor Abbott, I think this is just the way it is. I mean, whether it's villagers, and I suspect not always, and it's people that are doing a drive-by and there's an easy thing. And it's not just that can, I know it Works Manager, it's other ones too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your input, and thanks very much for calling Waste Management. Councillor Abbott, I think you've got a bunch of stuff. Is there something else that we should go through? Or everything you need?
If everyone's happy to work through us on the other ones, I think the other ones are stuff we typically do and we have been doing around this one. We just want to amp it up. Peter's got
bullet number 3, create a post box mail flyer to reinforce best practices on storage. Would the Bear Smart group create that?
Yes, there was talk of using one we did. No, we're going to do a special one. This is going to be we'll create a new one.
I was going to say we did do one about 6 months ago, I think.
Yeah, no, but this was meant to be one about this we have a new schedule. If you live on these streets, so it's more focused.
Oh, just for those streets.
Well, not just for those streets,
Oh, no,
but we're gonna focus it on that more than the more general information we had last time.
Were you thinking of it distributed to just those streets or a full box?
I think we're going to give it
Full
to.
box and name the streets?
I don't
I
think.
think what's easy for you.
No, we were going to put it in the mailboxes, so I don't think we know which mailboxes belong to which street.
Is that a problem, CFO?
So you mean being selected?
Oh, well, let's pick whatever street from.
I think it'd be easier just to put them in all.
Yeah,
I
you
think
have
it's
to
easier to
address
put them in
otherwise,
all.
Then it would be regular mail.
Yeah,
Put them in all.
Distinguish it's either all of them or.
It's a good refresher for all.
yeah. We'll put it in. Yeah.
So that's in process. Anything more we can do to assist Councillor Abbott?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Only one question when it comes to what is the earliest pickup there is for garbage? So those residents that are now, if they're going to endeavor to pick up on those problematic streets between 7:30 and 9:30.
Yeah.
Those other residents that are used to having their garbage picked up more like around 8, that is going to change their schedule.
Mhm.
So there could be problematic if somebody's suddenly getting their garbage picked up at 5:30 in the morning, and that's not typical.
I don't think anyone, Nike, I don't think anyone's going to get picked up any earlier.
No,
No?
7:30 is the earliest.
Okay,
And they will have those streets that I mentioned done in an hour and a half. So by
Okay.
9 o'clock, they'll be done, and then they'll hit the other streets.
I'm just being selfish here because I can't see me
Hmm.
up and on the curb by 5:30 and I see my garbage getting missed. But that's good to know.
That was a concern that was expressed by Waste Control, is the missed pickups. We do have several that have happened after the fact or late putouts, as they call it. But we can manage that.
All right, thank you, Nye.
Thank you very much. And back to all of us here, I see from the gallery that's on the chat, the suggestion is there another location that would be less available to non-villagers from throwing stuff in the bin? I mean, the park and ride, once you know it's there and you're commuting, it's there. I think we kind of quickly explored it. The properties we own would be the either of the 2 lower parking lots.
Which is.
I'm trying to
gonna be a
think easy here.
Nightmare in the summertime.
I
If you
think
were,
that-
I'm thinking cliff jumpers at Calvin Grove, they're gonna have that bin filled.
This is still a temporary, for me, I think the location is so central and so easy for everybody that, and I guess this question's for the works manager, if it's oversubscribed by the villagers being a good thing because they're trying to comply, or if we have some visitors that are not taking their stuff home and the bin is regularly filled, I quite frankly, I'm fine with, in my view, just getting them to take it away, and it's just a cost we absorb.
Well, I guess that we need to manage behaviors, because what we don't want to do is end up creating a space where
we
a
don't-
whole lot of extra stuff gets dumped there that's rotting, and then we don't want that trash.
Need a dumpster sign, I think, for Mr. Bear there.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll get back to you now. Let's just think.
Yeah, the other concern would be people using the bin to dispose of garbage earlier rather than putting it out on the street.
That's what my mind was, and can you put
Yeah.
a time lock on it? You can only use it on Thursday night, or how do you do that, right?
Yeah,
Well, I think you just answered it.
Could
But
you
a
put
lot-
a lock on it with a code that could be provided to residents who have essentially
Just got-
subscribed to its
Just
use?
give a lock to the BEO.
Put a lock on it and
Unlock it on Thursday night and
When he's checking.
Yeah. absolutely. That's
lock it back up on
brilliant.
Friday.
All right.
And we just tell people there's your other option if you can.
Good
comply.
ideas.
why Thursday night? Why not Friday morning at 7 or something?
Well, people have got this issue that they get up at 5:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
and they've got even a friendly neighbor. They can go down and lock it up.
Other than you and I, who's getting up at 5?
Well, you'd be surprised.
Okay.
Even in,
Lost me.
even in our small group, it's like, well, I couldn't cook like that.
And thinking garbage. Okay, so I think we've got this one kind of beat up. I think that was a great idea. I don't know. Okay, so we'll leave that with you, Councillor Abbott, and the works manager to do the fine tuning on this. Okay.
Just one last appeal. If there's anyone listening that has any interest in helping out the Best Smart group, we're very short-handed. We've had some people that have been unable to stick with us this year and moved on for personal reasons. So if anyone's interested in helping us out with any of this, be it a little bit of writing, or I really would love to find someone that would just manage the website and the data and the spreadsheet, which I'm trying to do and I'm battling to keep up with. So there's an appeal for a volunteer.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure that appears in the mayor's message on Friday. And I hope to have the ESS volunteers finished this week. I'll find some bear smarters for you. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Very extensive and all good work. Next piece is the reports. Mayor, I have none. Councillors, if you have any, please come forward. Councillor Payne, none. Committees, anybody? Nope. Okay, thanks. Next is emergency services, and you've got the report for you. Can I ask that you put forward the motion to receive, Councillor Abbott, the fire dispatch monthly report?
I'll put a motion forward to receive.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe, you second.
Second.
Any questions that we need to have answered by? None. Call a motion. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Bain, will you put forward the motion to receive the March and April RCMP activity report?
I do.
I will second. Any questions on this?
Nope.
Nope. I don't. We're not speaking to the RCMP what another month or so. So, all right, good. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Carried, which brings us to resolutions, there being none. Next one, and this is three readings. And the recommendation is that the Village of Lions Bay Brunswick Beach Water System Parcel Tax Bylaw number 368, 2005, repeal bylaw number 619, 2022, be introduced and given three readings. Councillor Cunliffe, will you put that motion forward?
I put that motion forward.
Good. Councillor Bain, will you second, please?
I will.
And CFO, a quick update from the lovely news for the Brunswickers.
Yes, so as explained in the report, the bylaw was introduced in 2005. It was a 20-year parcel tax to repay some infrastructure costs to bring potable water to Brunswick Beach. And essentially, there were some grants received, but the portion left was borrowed for. And the idea was the parcel tax would pay back the borrowing. I was doing some analysis in the summer and realized that the money we had collected was equaling the amount of the debt after the 2021 payment, although the debt continues to 2024. So it's really just a housekeeping. We no longer need to collect the parcel tax. So this is a bylaw to repeal the parcel tax. And just to clarify on the debt, well, at the end of the day, by 2024, we'll have collected enough money to pay the debt, but we'll continue to pay the debt to 2024. So basically we're ahead. We've collected more revenue than we need right now. So that's flow into surplus, but we do have to continue to pay the debt until 2024, and we'll essentially drop in surplus each year. So at the end of the day, 2024, we'll have paid a certain amount of debt and we'll have collected exactly that amount in parcel tax. We just don't need to continue to collect it. So like I say, this is just to repeal the parcel tax.
Right.
There you go. This is three readings. Any other questions for the CFO? There being none, call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 There you go. Three readings done. Thank you. Next one is the election assent voting. And the motion is that election and assent voting bylaw number 620, 2022 be adopted. I'll put forward that motion. Councillor Bain, will you second me?
Second.
Thank you very much. Staff, any final on this one? I think we know what's going on here.
Yeah, nothing new.
Nothing new. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Very good. Carried. Thank you. Adopted. Next item is the correspondence. This would be Councillor Barmier's rotation. Unfortunately, he's not here. Moving to the next councillor, which is Councillor Cunliffe, would be doing the last quarter of the year. I've asked her to do the correspondence. Councillor Cunliffe, if you could do the general first.
All right, so we have a note from MP Wheeler about the BC Farmers Market Expansion Program. I say that this is to be received. Submission of Metro 2050 for acceptance by local governments. We have a resolution required for this, but this is something we'll be addressing.
I think we'll receive it for now, but
We'll receive it for now. It will be addressed in the future.
very quickly.
Yes. Next, we have the BC or Spark BC Accessibility Inclusion Awareness Day 2022. There are accessibility grants available to be received, as well as the luxury tax on recreational boats from the township of Spalumachine. This is again echoing the district and mayor of Sycamoore's previous, so that is to be received. And modernizing Canada's EI system to be received. And then the North Shore Standing Committee on Substance Abuse requesting that a representative from the village attend the in-person meeting on June 1st, 2022.
I understand you have an interest in this, Councillor Cunliffe.
Of which I put my name forward, and if there's no objections, I will attend on
I will
behalf of.
not fight you for it.
All right,
Councillor Hanson from District of North Vancouver will be very pleased when I phone him tomorrow and tell him that you'll be attending and be our representative in the future. Thank you very much for that offer.
all righty, and then we have some correspondence from Mr. Shredsky to be received for information. I believe that former Mayor Burr's his questions were answered by Public Works Manager Jaffer earlier, and his second round of questions will be addressed by Public Works Manager Jaffer in the short term. Receive information from resident Norma Rogers in regards to the tree application that was somewhat repealed to be received. And then we had information from Greg and Dunn in regards to the highway noise, which will be responded to, and we appreciate his input.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe, for standing in for Councillor Mayor. That concludes correspondence, new business. There is none, which brings us back to the public questions and comments. Got 10 minutes for that. If somebody would like to, from the gallery, put your hand up, please, and unmute. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't wish to. Mr. Shredsky.
Thank you. I would like to advise council on misleading information by administrator, suggesting that Lions Bay has to always finance fire equipment. Anmore Village has all fire equipment financed by government. If Mr. Administrator come to work more than twice a month, he will be able to investigate that and learn how we can finance our equipment other ways without selling our lands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor, just a second, Mr. Shore. Councillor Abbott, I don't believe Mr. Shredsky's information is correct. I believe that Anmore funds all of their gear, and they pay Metro Vancouver an administrative fee for their services, which would be the equivalent of what CFO Rook does. And I've arranged, Mr. Shredsky, that when I pass this on information with my last conversation with with a couple of the councillors. I've arranged with Councillor Abbott to speak to the Mayor of Vanmore, and they've traded particulars. And if there's anything different than that, perhaps Councillor Abbott can report to us next meeting, if that's fine with you, Councillor Abbott.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Shore.
Good evening, everyone. My question goes to what the policy or the intent is on answering the questions that come from the gallery. I know that you occasionally answer a question. More frequently, it is tabled. There's a few questions earlier tonight that there was just no response other than going on to the next speaker. Well, first of all, what is your policy or your intent on answering those questions? That's for you, Ron.
The CAO, before we did the first participation of the public, highlighted the answer to your question, Mr. Shore. Some of our preference, if the question is complicated, using Mr. Dunn's question, which is fairly complicated on the highway issue, we'll do some investigative work. If the question is, as somebody else may have said, where is this or what is that? Or as Mayor Burr has said, it's an ongoing piece. Mr. Sredsky, as an example, has just made a statement and I've answered it. So where possible, we would give a quick answer if it's readily known or available. If it's a more complicated piece, we would respond to it. As we have tonight, where I've asked staff to respond to certain sections. I think pretty much we've covered all the questions.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I'll ask a question that I asked the last time. It wasn't the last week, or the last meeting, it was the one prior. When I asked, the general topic was around the spending and the increase in spending. And the fact that I had asked a question went into the meeting, into the minutes that is, but my questions didn't, and they still haven't been answered. And the first one was, how much are we paying the project manager who's supposed to be managing projects that we haven't really committed to as a village? And I made some comments about how some of those projects really weren't wanted, but it seems, I think my last statement was words to the effect that we have a project manager being hired for projects we really don't want. So my question was, how much are we paying him? And my alternate question was, why aren't the staff members that we're already paying doing that job? I think they're capable of project management. Why are we hiring an outside person to do something that can be done by the staff that we're already paying? And if you need to table that question, I'd be surprised. I think that's the kind of thing that you can just be. The other thing is that if you're not answering the questions while we ask them, there's some feeling on our part, or you risk the possibility of us feeling that you're either not interested in answering them, or you need time to spin up an answer that might be from a consortium of people. These are questions that you can just tell us the answers.
Two questions. One is, how much are we paying the project manager?
We're proposing to, yeah.
So just to clarify your phrasing of that question, Mr. Shore, you phrased it as for projects that we haven't committed to or don't really want. Certainly there are some people that don't want some projects, but council has committed to all of these projects in the past and past resolutions to move forward with them. So I think you're mischaracterizing your question to begin with, and it needs to be clarified in that sense. In terms of the budget for project management, that's going to be discussed momentarily and closed. There's some unit rates that are within that information. And so firstly, it will be discussed and closed. It will be reported out afterwards. And in terms of staff taking on additional functions, we are already stretched thin to do all of the core work that we have to do every day. There are a number of matters that are on my plate that I haven't had the time to get to. There are residents who are waiting for me to respond to their issues. And so expecting someone who already does a full-time job, plus puts in an extra 10 to 20 hours of overtime, unpaid overtime every week. That's just not reasonable, Mr. Shore. And I think that as a business person, you would understand that. And so where there are substantive tasks that are still required to be done, work that is required, that we don't have staff capacity to do, we need to hire outside people to do that. In a larger municipality, they would probably have staff on hand. We don't even have a planner. We're doing all kinds of things that are not in our job descriptions. We wear many, many hats. And we do the best we can on behalf of the village, and we work damn hard at it. And so I take offense to the way in which you're characterizing your question, and I take offense to the implications and the insinuations that you're making. And I'd like you to retract that and apologize, because you don't know what you're talking about.
We take offense to you not coming to work. You don't come to work.
I work every day, Mr. Shredsky.
You don't come to work. We watch your car not arriving in Lions Bay. We watch it every day.
Thank you, Mr.
That's enough,
Switzky.
Mr. Shredsky, thank you very much.
Mr. Shore, if you'd like to have last word, I'm fine with that, but I will be reporting something out later this evening, and once we do, I'll ensure that you get advice of it by tomorrow.
Ron, this is Ken Berry. I've got my hand up. If I could ask one question.
Just a second, please, Ken. Mr. Shore, you had a chance, or you find to be responding?
Yeah, I'll just, it's still, before 9 o'clock, so I think we've got enough time. I don't apologize to the CAO. My questions were sincere, and I'm happy to spend any amount of time to go into the details that you wish. You said that I misrepresented the situation on some of the projects. You can't tell me, or maybe I'll put this as a question back to you. Are you telling me that you're committed to the beach park project and the connector project when you don't even have a budget for it yet?
Yes, Mr. Shore, we are.
Thank you very much, Mr.
You
Shore.
also said that you were going to go and get more feedback from the residents on Lions Bay Avenue, because you would be encroaching on their driveways and their hedges and such, and that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
So-
we're developing concept plans so that people can see what is intended and provide feedback on those ideas. So it all takes time. It requires other people to bring forward the concept plans. It's not something that staff can create. So yes, we're pulling all those things together so that we can embark upon that kind of additional public consultation and get that kind of feedback. But it all takes time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shore. We'll be moving on. Thank you for your questions, and we'll respond with what comes out of in camera to you later by tomorrow. Mr. Berry.
Hi, Ron. I'd just like to comment on Dave's questions and also Merrick's. I think what the residents are asking for is just plain English. Just respond to the questions when they're asked. Have some transparency. They don't always expect a perfect answer, but they do expect transparency, and they do expect to be heard. And I think a prime example of that is the Lunds asking questions earlier in the meeting, and those have yet to be responded to. And they're very simple questions. Just level up with the residents, answer the questions, and we expect transparency. So I would again ask, can you answer the Lunds questions, which have been skipped over and marginalized?
Mr. Berry, there was 5 or 6 or 7 scattergun questions that I couldn't write down fast enough. And we will take our time to answer those questions carefully, particularly since the Lunds have engaged legal counsel. So we will.
Okay, I'll ask
answers.
that question.
We will provide
There's
answers.
a few questions. Please just let us know who authorized those cameras. Is there a policy in the village?
As was stated in the village update, we are working on that.
Just answer
policy.
that now.
Mr.
I'm just
Berry,
looking for
answering
plain
it.
English right
We're
now.
working on that policy, Mr. Berry.
So there was no policy is the answer. And secondly, who authorized that? Was that the staff or was that the mayor or was that the council?
Dude, I just did first grade.
Mr. Barry, we have these cameras that have been used in the past, and that's what was used in this instance. to
So who
protect
authorized that?
the investment that the municipality.
Again, just
has
plain
made.
English is what we're looking for, Peter.
That's what I
You just
just
have to
did.
say, look, I authorized that, or the mayor authorized that.
okay.
We made a mistake and we've taken the cameras down. It's simple answer, transparent, clear. That's all the residents are asking for on all of the various questions. And that's why the frustration starts to move up. And obviously you're getting frustrated with this too, but again, plain English response. Don't beat around the bush. Just plain English when you answer questions. That would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
That's how we will answer them. We
Thank
will
you very
take
much.
care to make sure that we answer them fully and completely in plain English. Just when you do that on the spot, you tend to get things wrong. And you don't answer completely, you miss things.
You're allowed,
So
you're
we're
allowed to
going
get things
we're
wrong
going to
once in a while.
provide
People
accurate
appreciate that.
responses.
You're allowed to answer questions and be wrong once in a while. That's allowed. What isn't is non-transparency and just plain English. That's all the residents are asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barry, and we'll say that will be the end of the public participation this evening. And to those who listened, thank you. To those who came forward, thank you as well. And I think that all of council took Mr. Reuters and Mr. Barry's comments to heart, and we will try our level best to ensure that we can respond when we can, or that we follow up in writing to any questions. Anyhow, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll say goodnight to the gallery, and we'll be moving to the closed in just a second. And on that, council does not anticipate reconvening the open meeting for any purpose other than to adjourn the meeting generally and report out if applicable. Council anticipate, period. Can I put that motion forward? Councillor Abbott, will you second that with me?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further discussion? No, all in favor, yes, and we'll close the meeting. Thank you, carried. And good evening, gallery.
Check the gallery that went back in.
Good evening, everybody. It is 10:21. Council has come back from the in-camera meeting, and the following items are being reported out. The first item is that the CAO updated council on bylaw enforcement officer activity and on current and pending enforcement matters. The second item is that council confirmed the Curly Stewart Memorial Trust Fund Committee recommendation with the recipient to be awarded $750. On the next piece, the next one, council has directed staff to continue to work with core management on a unit rate basis while they flesh out the scope of services for each project. Staff is also being directed to issue a request for issue a request for proposal for construction management of the three projects, that is Lions Bay Avenue Connector, Lions Bay Beach Park renovation, and the Clat retrofit. And the last item, issue an RFP for architectural and landscaping services for phase 1 of the Lions Bay Beach Park renovation. That concludes our reporting out. Can I have a motion to close the meeting? Councillor Abbott?
I'll put it forward.
Good. Councillor Cunliffe seconds. All in favor? Yes.
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 Yes, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.